Hello again everyone, it's AniHive, and I'm back with new content. Last year was a bunch of ups and downs, and I've been dealing with my own mental health, so it's definitely been tough. Every time I end up taking a break, my mental health suffers pretty badly, so I'm trying my best to combat that. I can't guarantee consistent uploads, but I'll try my best to deliver content when I can. With that being said, what are we doing today? Well, during this extended break of mine, I decided to watch some anime. Now you might be thinking to yourself, but Mr. AniHive, don't you always watch anime? Not really. Besides checking out the seasonals for a couple episodes, I don't usually branch out or watch other stuff or watch things, period. I figured,
enough is enough!
I'll just sit down and watch stuff that's been on my list. In this time, I've discovered so many great things to watch and had such an enjoyable time that I had to talk about it. Now sit back, relax, and let's journey through the shows I've been watching in the past couple months. The start of my journey. When I started it, I was only planning on watching 6 episodes or so. I ended up finishing it all in one night. Oddtaxi was a good choice because the show itself is very engaging and interesting. If you haven't heard all the insane press it's getting, Oddtaxi is about a walrus named Odokawa. He's a taxi driver who's pretty cold and a closed-off person. In the town that he drives in, he gets wrapped up in a big mystery of where did this near-him high school girl go. There are so many ups, downs, twists and turns, and lots of other stuff. Since it's a mystery, the show kind of unravels itself the further and further it gets. It's like Bacano, if you've ever seen that show. Now, not only does the show address the mystery, but the characters are fleshed out and get more and more interesting as the show progresses, especially Odokawa. There's so many stories and plot lines all wrapped up together in the show, and with how the show progresses, it wraps up really well in the end. Many people compare this show to the Martin Scorsese film Taxi Driver, and I can't say because I haven't watched it, but from what I know about it, it sounds pretty similar. If you like mystery shows, you should check this one out. You should check it out regardless too, because it's pretty interesting. Also, the opening is fire. The ending is pretty catchy too. If you'd like to watch this show, it's on Crunchyroll and Verve. The next show in my never-ending list of anime. Another show from 2021 that I missed out on and heard nothing but praise for. Did I enjoy it? Not as much as everyone else, but it's not a bad show. You might have heard me talk about this show in one of my previous seasonal reviews, but for those who might have forgotten, Vivy is about the first autonomous AI in a futuristic world. All AI are tasked with one job they're supposed to fulfill so they don't get confused and misbehave. Vivy's task is to make people happy with her singing, and that's all she does until a certain floating robot invades her programming and tells her to save the world. It's pretty interesting. This floating robot named Matsumoto came from the future where all AI rebelled against humans and slaughtered them. Matsumoto tells Vivi that throughout her life, she has to change key events to stop the ending event from happening. The most interesting thing about this show is how Vivi grows and changes. With each event she encounters, she learns new things about her mission. She tries to figure out how to make people happy with her singing, and she constantly learns new things that make her goal that much harder to achieve. Because of this, however, she grows into her own person who feels more human. Besides that, the animation and character designs are pretty good as well. It's made by Wit Studio after all, and honestly, they can do no wrong. Everything they make is so fire. The music for this show is so good as well. Since Vivi is a singer, there are many songs she sings throughout the series, and they're all super good. The opening and the ending are just some of the songs she sings in the series. The background tracks are really good too. The music adds to the hype of the fight scenes. The hype for this show definitely came from the fact that it was written by the ReZero author. I was worried that it wouldn't be good because of it being an original, but I have to say, it's pretty good. I love how time passes with every event Vivi has to fix, and with it comes characters coming back and learning about what happened in the time that passed, and it's always interesting. I'd say to check out this show if you get the chance. It's on Funimation. This is the story of when worlds collide and insanity ensues. Just like Isekai Quartet, This show is a chibi show with various characters from the Keyworks, like Clannad, Canon, Air, and others. To be honest, I didn't even know the show existed until I was scrolling through Crunchyroll and found it, and I'm glad I did. It's such a fun show that pokes fun at some things within the Keyworks, and it's really funny. But with that knowledge comes spoilers, and a lot of them. Unlike Isekai Quartet that doesn't spoil too much, this straight up spoils everything. Character endings to some shows, things that happened in said show, etc. That being said, I've only watched Clannad and Canon, but I know the other Keyworks. But even so, it still spoils, so just be warned. This show is also a short show, so every episode is only 3 minutes. If you like Keyworks, like the idea of all your favorite characters together in one place, and funny humor, you'll definitely like this show. If you want to watch it, it's on Crunchyroll. Now, I enjoyed all the shows I've either watched or caught up to at this point, but I didn't feel a super love for them until I got to 86. I talked about this one in a previous video, but I feel like after watching it, I didn't explain it well enough, so here's my chance to improve on that. 86 is really about Vladlina Maliz, or Lena for short. She's a commander for the Republic of San Magnolia, who boasts an impressive no casualties rate because they use mechs known as juggernauts that are supposedly self-controlled, but Lena knows the truth. The reality is, San Magnolia has divided its people into 85 districts, and left people who don't look like San Magnolians, with blue hair and blue eyes, or silver hair and silver eyes, in the 86th district, where kids are forced to pilot the juggernauts, which will essentially lead them to death. Lena's goal is to help them in the best way possible so they can leave their situation and eventually defeat the enemy. It's super engaging. Lena is a San Magnolian, but she knows the situation the 86 are put in is wrong. Being a citizen of this republic has made her feel like she can't do anything, but she tries her best anyway. The best part is you'll see her grow from a leader who's oblivious and unaware of the situation to a leader who will do anything to get her way. Seeing her grow into that is one of the main appeals of the show, besides the Spearhead Squadron, led by the Undertaker Shin. This show shows two perspectives, one from Lena's and one from Shin's. It's nice because since we get to see both sides, we learn so much more about the world and the circumstances that plague the two characters. As the series progresses, we learn even more about the world, certain abilities people have, and even a story that changes a little bit. The second season is a little different from the first season, in that we don't see Lena that much, and it introduces a new character who's kind of annoying at first, but then you slowly realize the troubles and the things she's had to go through as well. I can't recommend this show enough. I don't even like war drama that much, but it's so compelling. If you like Attack on Titan, this feels a lot like it. Also like Attack on Titan, the openings and the endings are really good, especially the second season opening. That's slowly become one of my favorite openings. I'm not a big fan of the second season ending, but you can't always get what you want. Speaking of music, the soundtrack is by Hiroyuki Sawano, so you know it's gotta be good. If you want to watch it, it's on Crunchyroll and Verve. Out of all the shows I watched up to this point, this was the first one that I didn't really enjoy. Now, I don't think the show is bad, but overall, I didn't enjoy watching the show. This show is about Takemichi Hanagaki. He's struggling in the work world and is a big pushover. One day, he catches a news report saying that his girlfriend from middle school died. He becomes sad, but tries to continue with his life until someone pushes him onto the train tracks. He awakens, but he's in his body from when he was in middle school. This is the time of his life where he realizes why he became a pushover, and he tries to start over, until he meets his girlfriend's brother Naoto. For some reason, when Takemichi makes contact with him, he gets sent back to the present. With this new ability in hand, him and Naoto try to stop his sister from dying. It's a very interesting premise that feels very similar to Erased. Although it may seem like Erased, I don't think it's as good as it. Takemichi is a character that I really dislike. A part of the show revolves around how Takemichi doesn't want to be a pushover anymore, and the only way forward is to become more confident and attack the obstacles in his way. While there are various parts where he does this, in the whole grand scheme of things, I feel like he doesn't really change that much. He struggles a lot to become a person who can change the future, which is nice, but there are so many times where the things he does don't make much sense. Now I've heard he gets better and better, but his character development was too slow for me. Speaking of the characters in the show, besides Takemichi, I really enjoy them. Mikey and Draken, while separate, they have their own problems. Together, they balance each other out. The other gang members get a lot of backstory and development as well. There are reasons behind why they do specific things, which are pretty nice. There's also Hina, who's Takemichi's girlfriend. She's more confident than he is, and she really pushes him forward, which is also nice. Also, the opening is pretty good. Not a big fan of it, but a lot of people like it. With all the good points, you'd think I'd like this show, like so many others, but I just thought it was alright. I'm not the biggest fan of gang war or delinquent type stories. I know there's more going for it in the story, but most of the conflict revolves around which gang is the strongest. I like when Takemichi investigates though, because in order to find intel, he switches between the past and the present, which I think is a really cool way of using the time travel mechanic. Speaking of that, the tension in the show comes from that mechanic. However long he spends in the past is reflected in the real world. If he spends a week in the past, then a week passes in real life, so there's no do-overs. If he fails, it's over, and that's a really interesting concept. As much as I want to say I liked this show, I didn't really enjoy watching it. I'm still going to continue it because I've heard it gets better, but I don't know. If you'd like to watch this show, it's on Crunchyroll and surprisingly, HBO Max. This show was actually a surprise to me. I wasn't planning on watching this, but after scrolling through Crunchyroll, I decided to give it a shot. I've heard people recommend it before, but I've never seen it or even knew what it was about. After finishing the first season, I can safely say that I'm glad that I found it. The story of Golden Kamuy is about a man named Sugimoto. In the early 1900s, he was a part of the Russo-Japanese War and gained the reputation of the immortal Sugimoto because he just wouldn't die. Fast forward to after the war. Sugimoto is searching for money so he can help his comrade's wife who is sick. He overhears a story about the Ainu, who are a tribe around the area who have a lot of gold. This gold was stolen, however, by another group of people and was hidden around Hokkaido before they all got arrested. To remember where the gold was, the leader of the prisoners tattooed a map that spanned across all the prisoners. Sugimoto becomes interested in seeking this gold out, and when he meets a young Ainu girl named Ashripa, they team up to find the mysteries of this hidden gold. Now, I'm not gonna lie, when I first watched this show, I wasn't super into it. I watched the episodes, but I kinda felt bored watching them. It wasn't until later where I couldn't stop thinking about the story, the characters, and how interested I was in the overall product. This show is great. Each episode deals with them trying to find each prisoner, and with that comes interesting episodes of the prisoners' personalities, realizations behind the gold itself, and other things. This show may start out with a basic story, but as the show progresses, it becomes deeper and deeper. Sugimoto also gets himself in many fighting situations, so there's fights between him and the others searching for the gold. Ashripa teams up with him in most of these fights, and the strategy is really cool to see. Speaking of Ashripa, she's where most of the humor comes from, which is surprising. I wasn't expecting a show as violent as this one to have really funny bits, but it does. During the journey, they also have to hunt for food, and the more Sugimoto spends with Ashripa, the more he learns about the culture of their tribe and the food that they eat. This is what leads into funny reaction faces from Ashripa complaining about Japanese culture. She's like a reaction face machine. The show also does a great job balancing this humor with the serious moments, which makes the show that much more enjoyable. The other characters Sugimoto and Ashripa meet along the journey are all pretty interesting too. I already mentioned the interesting prisoners, some nice, others very bad. But there's also the leader of the army Sugimoto was a part of, and the other members of that squadron. They both have some interesting personalities, ranging from prideful but unsure to downright crazy. The opening and the ending are worth checking out too, since they're both pretty good. Now, out of all the good points, there's only like one bad thing about it, and it's that the animation isn't that great. It's made by a studio who hadn't made much before, and to be honest, it's hard to match the very detailed manga panels. I was very worried that I wouldn't like this show, since it takes place in a time period I'm not too interested in. But Golden Kamuy is a good show that I will continue, and I think you should try too. Good news for people who enjoy the show, they'll probably adapt all of it. Geno Studio did seasons 1 through 3, but for the 4th season, it'll be going to Brains Base, and hopefully they'll bring up the levels of animation and character design. If you'd like to watch it, it's on Crunchyroll, Verve, and Funimation. This show was another big surprise to me. I remember an anime YouTuber mentioning this show, and I saw the rating on Mao, so I figured I'd watch it. People haven't really been talking about this show, but I have to say, it's really good. This show is pretty unique in terms of the other shows I was watching, since it's a Chinese anime. These shows are pretty rare, and I haven't seen any of them, but I can safely say that this show is really good. So, the show is about these two guys named Guang Lu and Xiao Qi Chung. The two of them, led by Ling Qiao, run a business where they solve a client's problem by hopping into the past via pictures. Guang Lu determines which pictures are suitable for the task and guides his partner through the event. And Xiao Qi Chung jumps into the photo as a person in the picture. This is the main story in a nutshell, but what's most interesting about this show is the dynamic between the two main characters. Guang Lu is cold but calculated, and he comes up with a set of rules that Xiao Qi should follow when in the past. It's your standard, don't affect the past in any way type deal. This is tough for Xiao Qi because he's the outgoing one of the group, and he thinks with his emotions, so he's always willing to help out even at the cost of affecting the future. The two go back and forth on these rules till it becomes a big problem. Seeing how each event unfolds and learning more about these two characters is what really hooked me on the series. Also, the opening and the ending themes are great. It's hard for me to explain this series more without spoiling it, but I'll let you know that if you enjoyed this show, a second season is on the way, which I'm super excited about. If you want to watch this show, it's on Funimation. This has been on my list of shows for a long time. I was part of an anime club back in college, and I was the vice president. We watched Iruma-kun, and ever since then, I've wanted to continue it, but never did. Until now. Anyway, Iruma-kun is about Aruma Suzuki. He's a 14-year-old kid who is forced by his parents to do all the work since they were lazy. One day, his parents sell him off to a demon, and he finds himself in the underworld. Now he has to integrate into society and make sure nobody finds out that he's a human. If you forgot the synopsis, don't worry. The show will remind you at the start of every episode. Now, the synopsis itself sounds like a drama, but it's actually a slice-of-life comedy, and a great one at that. The first 2 episodes left such an impression that I couldn't stop thinking about it, so I sat down and actually watched more. I really enjoyed it. At first, Iruma is terrified at the fact that he was forced here beyond his will, but by slowly making friends and enjoying his time at Babylos, which is the school that he's enrolled in, he becomes more and more accepting of his life and actually enjoys it. What kept me watching is how funny it is. Iruma tries his best not to stand out, but the situations he gets himself in always put him at the center of attention, and they're super funny. His close friends are also super great as well. Asmodeus is the top of his class and initially becomes Aruma's servant basically, because Aruma suplexes him in a fight and is forced to serve him. It just seems like a servant relationship, but they become really close. Clara is a big weirdo that they meet in like the 3rd episode, but she eventually gets integrated into the group because she was also forced to. But Aruma, being the nice guy he is, plays games and stuff with her when no one else would. These two are the driving force behind Aruma enjoying his time at the school. The other driving force would probably be the Misfit class. That class is full of a lot of interesting characters, and in the second season, we learn more about each person and their special abilities. From the opening, I thought this would be a battle shonen, but they don't fight that often. It's more about Iruma enjoying his time at the school while his goals change, like becoming a higher rank, or even something like becoming a demon lord. The world building is really good for this show too. Although the first season has a bunch of explanations of things that happen at the school, the way they integrate the classes and the various activities with the culture of the world is very interesting. There's so many aspects of this show that I really love that I can't explain them all here, but I have to say, give this show a shot if you have the chance. It's animated really well, it's super funny, all the characters are really great, Mary's best girl, and overall super enjoyable. I'm pretty sure they're going to adapt all of it, since it's already got 2 seasons of 25 episodes with a 3rd season on the way, but we'll see. If you want to check it out, it's on Crunchyroll and Verve. This is the last show I watched that wasn't just me catching up. I have mixed feelings about this show. On one hand, this show is very interesting, to the point where I watched all 48 episodes. But on the other hand, this show is very ecchi and has some really outrageous moments that aren't really believable. If you put those 2 things aside, this show can be very good, however. Now, don't get turned off by the premise, but the main story is about Onizuka, a 22-year-old man who is a delinquent and is pretty perverted. He wants to become a teacher so he can get a young girl as a girlfriend, but in his time as a teacher, he learns that he can teach these kids life lessons and set them straight in his own way. So he tries to be more mature while also still being himself. As much as I'd say watch the show, I can't recommend it to people who don't like ecchi. There's a lot of it used as jokes or even just as sexual situations, so you might get turned off, but if you try it, you might find out you like it. Onizuka is extremely likable. When he gets assigned as a teacher, he gets put in a class full of delinquent kids who love to rebel against teachers, but Onizuka uses strategies that might seem outlandish to some, but just another Tuesday for Onizuka. The way he solves problems are always extremely entertaining to watch, even if sometimes it's a little too aggressive or unteacher-like. This show can also get kinda repetitive at times. Most of the characters act the exact same in every situation, like that's their one personality trait. Some great examples of this are the vice principal and Fuyutsuki. The vice principal will stop at nothing to get Onizuka fired, and that's like his only character trait. Albeit, it's really funny when Onizuka does something and the principal freaks out, but it can get tiresome at times. Fuyutsuki is the same. She was a student teacher with Onizuka and didn't really know enough about Onizuka, so she assumed he was a bad person. But after actually seeing his methods of changing people, she switches her tune to liking Onizuka, and that's it. There are a couple episodes where she's the main focus and they talk about why she wanted to become a teacher, but other than that, she's just a character who really just reacts to things. Now to the bread and butter of this show, the delinquent class. The appeal of this show is Onizuka and how he ropes every student of this class into having a great time at school. Each situation, like I said before, is extremely interesting, and figuring out what he'll do next is always fun to me. I was reading some forums and some people didn't really like some of the stories in the show, since it's kinda episodic. Some of them I can agree on because it doesn't seem like there's repercussions for some of these students' actions, but I don't think the show is supposed to be taken that seriously. In that sense, the show's pretty good. The soundtrack is also surprisingly good as well, with the openings, both of them, being super good. If you're interested in this show, it's on Crunchyroll, Prime Video, the dub only, Verve, and Tubi TV. I'll warn you about Crunchyroll though. For some reason, once I got to episode 4, the sound coming from my PlayStation was super bad. It was just a high-pitched noise, and that's it. It was fine on my phone though. The other issue is that the subtitles sometimes lag behind, and you'll miss information. It can be a bother, so just watch out. Now those were all the shows I hadn't watched before, but here are all the shows I caught up to during this time. Don't worry, this part won't be very long, since they're mainly me catching up to the next seasons, so I won't explain too much. the final season of Non Biyori, and I'm sad to see it go. It had been a while since the second season, so to see another announcement of a third season had me super hype. Now this show is about a girl's adventures with the people she meets in this small rural town, slice of life style. That's not it, however. This show is extremely funny, and it shows so much about all the characters. You'll recognize everyone and each of their personalities. I was watching it as it was airing, and I just recently finished it. If you haven't started it, please do. Such a great show, and the third season I think is the best season, from what I can remember. Also, the opening and the endings for this season are pretty good. If you want to watch, it's on Crunchyroll. I tried with this show, I really did, but I liked it even less than Demon Slayer, and I also didn't like the first season of that show. There's very little that I like about this show, besides the music and the animation. I'm not interested in any of the characters, the arcs are kinda boring, and overall, I didn't like watching it. I continued till the school tournament arc, but then I dropped it after that. I know many people like this show, but I just couldn't get into it. I honestly think Demon Slayer is better. The characters are just more interesting, and the arcs are just better. Anyway, if you like this show, great. I just didn't. If you want to watch it, it's on Funimation, Hulu, and Crunchyroll. I finally caught up to Haikyuu. I was watching it when it came out, but stopped because I do that a lot, honestly. I'm glad I came back because this season was really good. Animation change aside, the story really feels like it's coming to a climax. Hinata is learning so much more about volleyball and is generally becoming the person to rally everyone together. Kageyama is becoming more of a skilled setter, and everyone else on the team gets their time to shine too, especially Tanaka. The great thing about this show is that it deals with problems characters face while playing volleyball, but these problems transcend volleyball and apply to life. Tanaka's whole arc is about him feeling inferior, and how he gets past it is fun to watch. I also love learning about the other teams and their own struggles and problems. There's a reason why Haikyuu is so loved, and I can't recommend it enough. Even if you hate volleyball, please give it a try. Great show. If you want to watch it, it's on Netflix, the first season only, Crunchyroll, Hulu, and Funimation. As a big fan of the first season, I was excited for the second season, and I wasn't disappointed. The first season dealt with a guy who revived and zombified various girls/idols so that they could become an idol group to save the Saga prefecture of Japan. Wild, I know. But it actually becomes really interesting with backstories to all the characters and progression for the group to become big. The second season showcases a comeback for the group after a big failure at a huge arena. They also address why the manager is doing all this, and even address if what the manager is doing is morally right. It's pretty interesting. It all ends pretty nicely, until it leaves off on a big cliffhanger. They're making a movie, so we have to wait a little bit longer, but if you're interested, check it out on Crunchyroll. After so long, we finally have another Kyoto animation series after the tragedy of the Studio One fire. They really brought their A game because this season of Dragon Maid looks so good, both animation and character design wise. Everything is so clean. I enjoy the events that happen this season more than the first one too. The first season dealt with Toru coming from her world into this one, and becoming a maid for Kobayashi. Kobayashi met other dragons who came from Toru's world, and it was all around a slice-of-life show. The second season deals more with the past of all these dragons, and even talks about how Kobayashi was alone, but with all these new friends, her life became invigorated. Still slice-of-lifey, but pretty good. You should check it out when you get the chance, although this season is more fan-servicey than the first season, so just watch out for that. Anyway, if you'd like to watch this show, it's on Crunchyroll and Funimation. This was a shame. I've made a review before talking about the first season and how it was so great, but I also mentioned that the main goal is finished by the end of the first season. So what could they possibly do? I'm guessing they didn't really know either, because it turns into a straight slice of life. New characters get introduced, but it's essentially Katarina getting herself into bad situations and avoiding the harem as much as her oblivious mind can. Now, I like slice of life, but not slice of life that has nothing to do with anything. It's still funny, but with no real goal anymore, it's just boring now. The season ends on a cliffhanger, so I might continue it because a new goal might come up, but I'm done with it for now. If you'd like to continue it, it's on Crunchyroll. Now, I love Dr. Stone, but I didn't enjoy this season that much. I liked it a lot when Senku would just make a bunch of stuff, and that was really interesting. But this season was just a war between him and that gorilla muscle guy, Tsukasa. I have to admit that them making stuff was still in this season, and there are some new characters that we meet who are really great, but the whole battle was really fast, and I didn't really care for it, to be honest. I'm more excited for the second season though, because they'll finally explore the world and figure out why everyone turned to stone. Until then, however, we'll just have to wait. Anyway, if you want to watch it, it's on Crunchyroll. I finished the first season when it was airing, and never continued the second season. Till now. Now that all the world building is out of the way from the first season, the next season should be more action heavy, right? Wrong. These seasons do have great action, but man, there is so much diplomatic meeting talk in both parts of the second season. I understand it's important for what Rimuru is trying to do, but man, it drags, especially in the second part of season 2. Seeing Rimuru become stronger and expand his kingdom is interesting, however. Definitely watch it if you like the first season, but we'll see what happens next. If you want to watch it, it's on Crunchyroll. While I don't think it's bad, it's a bit slow and pretty long at 100 plus episodes, so I've been kinda taking my time with it. I just finished an arc where the match was like 9 or 10 episodes, and it had like maybe 3 to 4 good episodes in my opinion. It's probably better in the manga, but the pacing can be kinda bad for this show. It doesn't matter much though, because the show itself is overall good. I've been watching it for a while now, and now I'm on episode 50 something. I'll finish it one of these days. If you like seeing a delinquent develop into more and more of a better basketball player and person, you should check out this show. Also, Hanamichi is great whenever he's on screen, so there's that. If you want to watch it, it's on Crunchyroll and Prime Video. I've talked about this show in the past on one of my seasonal reviews, but little did I realize it would become one of my favorite shows of all time. I don't want to talk about it too much because I want to make a separate review about it, but it's great, especially this new season. After Rudy and Eris get separated from everyone, he forms a group called Dead End and they adventure to return home. What's so great about this season is how the members of Dead End change. They change into people that are completely different from how they started, and that's always a good thing to see in a show. Also, there are some great character moments for Rudy, and they can get extremely sad. There are also some phenomenal fights in the second season. There's not much bad I can say about this show, other than its fan service. It's hard to recommend because of it, but if you look at it as a character flaw in Rudy, you'll see the show for what it is. A very well crafted show that develops its characters and showcases the world and its changes really well. Please give it a try. If you stick with it, you might really enjoy it like myself. If you want to watch this, it's on Hulu and Funimation. Phew! A lot of shows again. I love doing longer review videos like this because I can discuss more shows in a shorter format rather than doing videos for every single one. I might do single videos for some of them, but for most of them, I don't have much to say. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I might do this as a series when I watch a lot of shows again. If you liked today's video, please subscribe, like, and comment. I try my best with these videos, so subscribe so we can get the channel to a wider audience. Don't forget, join the Hive Mind.